Good evening, everyone.
Uh-oh.
It's me this time. It was me. I confess. Welcome to our first regular city council meeting here in March. Today's Tuesday, March 4th. So we are obviously here in person at City Hall, and we are also live on Zoom. I want to welcome everybody. We're going to start off with the invocation given by Mayor Pro Tem Cargill, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
Our Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the opportunity to come together this evening as a council and as a community to do the business of the city. And we ask for your blessing upon our meeting this evening, that we can do what is best for our citizens and our town and our country. In Jesus' name, amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. I know Councilmember Spencer is out on business. I believe Councilmember Dunn is supposed to be here, but we'll go ahead and ask for excusal. So we'll go ahead and start off with Councilmember Van Orman here, Councilmember Kurtz,
Present.
Councilmember Ball
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cargill,
Present.
Councilmember Dunn, Councilmember Kennedy.
Present.
All right, do we have a motion to excuse Councilmember Spencer?
So moved.
We have a
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Kennedy. All right, all in favor of the excusal, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. We are up to agenda approval.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Dunn. All in favor of approving the agenda as printed, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, moving right along. We are up to citizen comments. So it's like some of you know the process. So if you're here in chambers and would like to make a citizen comment, we do have these yellow half sheets by the door over there. If you are online and would like to make a comment, please send a note to our meeting host in chat. We'll do those in person first, and then we'll go to the ones in chat. As a reminder, it is a comments period only. There's no back and forth. If we need to get back with you with some answers on something, we'll make sure we have your contact information. 3-minute limit, and we just ask that you remain respectful. And for the audience, we do ask to with refrain from any boos, yays, anything like that. We just like to keep it nice and sane around here. So I will go ahead and start. The one on top, we have Kim Gerard. Welcome. Oh, and make sure you let us know if you are live in the city limits.
My name's Kim Gerard. I do live in the city limits. I lived here for 6 years and have been surprised at how extensive the previous plans for the land by the Saturday market were. It must be frustrating for our city's founders to watch that land sit idle after all these years when they started with such a hopeful vision for a town center. As historian and author Sharon McMahon shares stories about people in our past who made great contributions gone largely unnoticed, she reminds us that we always have the opportunity to do the next right thing. What is the next right thing for our town square, for our city? It seems that in this adolescent period towards city build out, it's time for us to take a look at what is here right now and plan for a city that will continue to provide a safe and enriching place to raise families from infancy to elderly. As I listen to discussion about the library, moving City Hall, increasing city office space for city workers, and developing the entire town square area, the scope of all of that is overwhelming. Like any large project, large or small, it needs to happen with a vision for the final outcome, with eyes on the step-by-step details. It is right for the city services and facilities to catch up with the growth that our city has seen. It is also right to slow this project down and not rush it through for the sake of getting it on a November ballot. When is the next available time to bring a fully developed project to the people? I'm not sure, but taking the time to develop the project in a slow, thoughtful manner with community input will ensure its best success. Using our Community Engagement Commission would provide more citizens the opportunity for input and allow for more education about why we need a library with expanded space and programming that will meet community needs. It is also right to slow down the big, huge project and take one step at a time. Start with a library designed to meet the needs of a town moving forward towards its build-out population. The 2019 consultant report recommended 19,000 square feet for the library. Yes, the Legacy Church building was smaller than at 14,000 square feet, but like teachers, librarians are in the service industry, and library supporters were thankful that the Legacy Church building was much larger than our current space. But we will move on. Starting with the library will give the community time to grapple with defining its needs for a community center, a pool, a public market, more city office space. While I myself might not be interested in some of those, I recognize that each one of them will enrich our community and make this a better place to raise families. Starting with one building, partial funds for which have already been set aside seems like the next right step. There's community excitement about the idea of finally developing that town square. Let's slow it down, take it step by step, allow for more community engagement to guide Liberty Lake toward its full potential.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, let's see, we have Lynette Atkins. Welcome.
So Lynn Atkins, yes, I'm a resident of Liberty Lake. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to speak about the planning for the new library, and I know you're shocked. One day I will have a different topic, I promise. So anyway, after listening to Council's discussion at the special meeting last week, there does not seem to be an agreement on what is to be included in a community center or what the citizens want in one. I did some impromptu polling of neighbors and friends, by no means a scientific method. The responses were everything from building with rooms for classes and events to an art studio, to ping pong tables, to a basketball court, to a commercial kitchen, to a pottery studio, and dare I say it, a swimming pool. Now, I know this was only a small sampling of people, but I believe it speaks to a need for engagement and communication and participation in the planning with our citizens. This could be done with the assistance of the Community Engagement Committee. There needs to be an understanding of what the timeline and the sources of funding look like. For example, citizens might not want the burden all at once. Maybe they want it phased over 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Developing a phased plan that includes a timeline for funding the project will create the best opportunity for success if it is necessary to take a vote. Now, I'm not saying don't build a library. I think you all know that. Or I'm not saying don't build a community center. What I am saying is if we want citizens to buy into the project, we need to solicit their input, not just once, but throughout the planning process. I am saying take the time to plan for the construction, plan the phasing, plan the strategy for funding, build it into the future budgets, and seek alternative sources of funding to lighten the financial burden on the citizens. Seeking out alternative sources of funding takes time, whether it's capital campaign that includes sponsorships and donations, or if it's grant funding. And I just found out today, by the way, that the Mount Vernon, Washington Library just moved into a beautiful new building, and they got federal funding for parking structures and EV charging stations. They took that money, they built the parking lot, and they put the library on the top. So, to sum up, I'm asking you to consider 3 things. Do not rush the planning process in order to get it all done by August to be on a November ballot. Plan out all elements, starting with citizen input, the scope of the build, and how you can phase the construction and developing the funds, and take the time to explore all potential forms of funding. By doing these things, the project has the best probability of success, as well as creating buildings that your citizens want and will fill their needs in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Everybody's doing great on time tonight. And last but not least, in person, we have Craig Phobes.
Good evening, Craig Phobes, Liberty Lake resident on the work order for the library. I'm a strong proponent of a clear path to a 21st century library that meets the city's needs at full capacity. That said, I oppose approval of the current work order as it is written. Meaning no disrespect, the current path and process the council has begun, in my view, is best described as ready, fire, aim. I believe that the proposed path is flawed by two fundamental and interrelated issues, ambiguity and haste. Whether or not it is the intention, I believe it sets the project up to fail. The first problem is ambiguity. At the basic administrative level, the draft work order is not consistent with your direction from your February 25th meeting to, quote, prepare two options, one with just the library and one with the library plus community center addition. But that's not what the work order says. Instead, it refers vaguely to, quote, some form of library community center finalized by the Liberty Lake City Council. More fundamentally, over the last several library discussions, every member of this council has essentially said that the name community center is a real stinker, very ripe with ambiguity. What you have all been describing as your goal is a flexible meeting space annexed to the library for mixed use by the library and the community. I urge you to stop using the phrase community center and use any other term that provides specific functional guidance to the staff and the consultants and clarity to the community. The second problem is haste. As a former software developer, we lived by the creed, if you can't take the time to do it right, how are you going to find the time to do it over? This November's general election is an artificially imposed deadline. It's a shotgun wedding when you haven't even conceived. With election-related deadlines, that forces the work order to specify that by this June, the consultant must provide, quote, master planning, test fits, community engagement, and conceptual cost models. And that reference to community engagement ties right back to the first problem. Community engagement on what? Start at the beginning. Move forward deliberately with no artificial deadline and speaking precisely with one voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. If there's anybody else in chambers who'd like to speak, we can take your yellow sheet. In the meantime, first I'll ask Kelsey if we have any written comments to acknowledge, and then I'll also remind anybody online who'd like to make a citizen comment, shoot a quick note to our meeting host. If there's not a comment now, there is another time at the end of the meeting.
We did receive one written public comment from Patricia Botkins regarding the proposed town square project.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anybody online? Okay. All right. Hearing no more citizen comments, we will move on to announcements, proclamations, and special presentations. Up first is our proclamation for Developmental Disabilities Month. So we'll go ahead and start with Kelsey. And before we finish up, I will have Deb come up and speak, if that's okay.
Whereas intellectual and/or developmental disabilities impact over 7,000 Spokane County residents and their families. And whereas growing numbers of these individuals and their families live, work, and go to school in Liberty Lake and are essential to the vibrancy of our city. And whereas the barriers to leading full and productive lives that are often faced by individuals with developmental disabilities can only be removed by community commitments to increasing awareness, opportunity, inclusion, and support. And whereas for this reason, in 1987, President Ronald Reagan issued a proclamation establishing March as National Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month.
All right. Well, I want to thank, we're not finished. I want to thank Councilmember Dunn for bringing this forward. And we do have Deb Fink and some other folks here associated with Building Ohana. If you'd like to just say a couple quick words, Deb, welcome up. I know most of the council has heard about the Building Ohana project before, but we continue to support this.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, for inviting me up. I was going to say, stay silent tonight and just celebrate this. I want to say two things, and that is that we have a crowd, a small crowd, but a crowd of people here. A family I just met yesterday, Adam, Mary, and Mick, and some folks you recognize from our other community engagement meetings. Our development is about community engagement, so I strongly love that comment about how important that is. I just want to say that my son couldn't be here because I went over to get him, and Well, he was having what looked like seizures, and so they had to hold off and then medicate him. And then I got on the freeway and went 50,000 miles an hour to get here on time. I want to say that for every family in our community and every individual who deals with developmental disabilities, there are always those kinds of complications. And yet the joys and the experience of knowing people and working with them and living beside them, engaging with them is one of the most precious experiences you'll ever have. Or you might be one of those people yourselves. We all have disabilities sooner or later. And this proclamation tells me and all these family members and supporters here that the City of Liberty Lake is happy to celebrate those people in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So do we have a motion to approve our proclamation?
I'll make a motion to approve the proclamation.
Thank
Second.
you. We have a motion from Councilmember Ball and second by Mayor Pro Tem. Do you have a comment?
I was recognized a second. from
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Perfect. All right. Now therefore, we, the mayor and city council members of the City of Liberty Lake, on behalf of its citizens, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as Developmental Disabilities Month in the City of Liberty Lake, Washington.
You want us to vote? Want to vote?
Oh, yeah, that would help. All right, so I won't sign it until you vote. All those in favor, please say aye. So excited. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. So now I'll sign it. We didn't always do the voting on the proclamation, but I think it's good to show that support. Okay. Councilmember Kennedy.
I would like to make a comment for this proclamation that I, as an individual, is very excited that the city has taken the commitment for this. My wife Betty and I had a child that has special needs, and for her first 44 years of her life till she passed away, had all those special needs, and it was something that was near and dear to us. We went through the 60s and stuff when there was no education for people with special needs. We worked closely with the state and the county to be able to get in line with the students and stuff. So the leaps and bounds that we have achieved for people with special needs is absolutely phenomenal. It's very close to home with me. I'm very proud of what we've done today. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for coming. We can get you a copy if you'd like. Kelsey, can I give him this one and I'll sign a separate one for us? And then we're gonna just take a couple minutes to let you guys, if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. We won't be offended. Thanks. everybody. Okay, moving on, we have program profile, budget development and management. Now, you guys have probably noticed that Mark is not with us in person today. He's a little under the weather, but he is online, and Kyle's going to run with this.
Thank you, Evan. If we could pull that up whenever you can. Excellent, thank you. So for this council meeting, our program profile is on budget development and management. You're fine. You're fine. We'll wait for him to pull that up. And so next slide, please. And so obviously this is within the Finance and Administrative Services Department. And what you'll notice about a lot of our programs is they are internally focused. Our focus is providing services to city staff for them to go then carry out services to the rest of the community. So you'll see this governance, you'll see this governance piece on a lot of the finance and administrative service profiles as we are inwardly focused, whereas most of our other departments are outwardly focused, actually serving the community directly. So what is the budget development and management? Preparation of anticipated resources and expenses for services in the preceding year, and ongoing analysis of revenues and expenses in relation to those services after budget adoption. That's that's what you guys get kind of on a monthly basis. We send out these reports and just kind of a little timestamp on where we're at for that year and how we're doing. Are there any revenues that aren't meeting expectations? Are we going over in any specific other service delivery mechanism that we need to account for separately? And so really that's this ongoing analysis that you see by me on a daily basis and then updating you every month and then quarterly as well. So we have carved out, and obviously a chunk of my position is budget development and management. Mark, you all have a part in this as well as we go through review. The mayor, it's her budget, and so she puts a lot of that together and then delivers the budget message. And so we all kind of have a hand in this that's sliced pretty thin because it's cyclical. And so, we may not touch on any specific budget related item for a couple months. And then as kind of July, August, September roll around, we get really heavy into budget development. And then October, November, December, really heavy into review. So as you can see, the resources there are on the left. As you will see with a lot of these program profiles that department directors will bring you, the demand for this program is increasing. City staff is increasing. Our population is increasing. Service level delivery demand is increasing in general, kind of throughout all of the services that we provide. One of the things you'll notice on here is that less than 10% of the population is benefiting. The reason we say that is because this is inwardly focused. So this isn't, you think of all 13 or 14,000 of our residents directly benefiting from this. They're benefiting it from this secondarily. So we are setting service level demand by adopting the budget every year. That then gives city staff the ability to go deliver those services directly to the community. So again, I'm going to touch on this. This is more of an inwardly focused program. There are elements of a community program in this, but really for the exercise we did here, this was more inwardly focused for us to give city staff the ability to go deliver those core services that we provide. So this is mandated by the state. Unfortunately, there is no cost recovery, and the city is the sole provider. Next slide, please, Evan. Again, the accordant alignment with our strategic plan really centers on the public service excellence element. And this is one of the most aligned programs that we have because it is a direct alignment. Providing this service aligns extremely with what we have identified as public service excellence. Next slide, please, Evan. So what are the results we're hoping to achieve, evaluate against periodically, annually? One of the, obviously the most important piece of this is the budget remains aligned with this strategic plan each year. We have identified these priorities. Are we carrying them out? How can we tell? And so we can tell pretty easily by the proportion of the budget that is allocated to the highest priority programs. And so I think we have heard pretty roundly that public safety is going to be one of the most important community services that we deliver to our residents. We can see by our budget adoption and by expenses and resources that are attributed to those expenses that public safety is the most important priority for the city by dollars spent. We evaluate, as I mentioned before, annually, monthly, quarterly, projected versus actual revenue collection. We report that. We have mechanisms in place that if we are not meeting projected revenue collections, that there are steps that we can take to either lessen service delivery, reallocate resources, and those are all identified in our budget document. And then timeliness of quarterly reports. So you guys have the information needed to make those decisions. Second result, next slide, please. So fiscal health remains strong each year. I'm going to take you through kind of a year-end snapshot that we do every year that really is kind of a culmination of, what we do 4 times a year at council and monthly with our reports, is just giving you guys the information you need to continue to make these decisions on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. Are our revenues meeting projections? Yes. Are we in line with our expenses? Yes. And if we are not, let's discuss mitigation efforts. And so you'll see healthy reserve fund balances. You'll see that we are complying with financial policies. And then we get a report card every single year from the annual auditors. And so that's for that one. And then, so that is it for budget development and management. Are there any questions on this one? Thank you.
Riveting as finance
Oh,
always is.
always is.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. All right, next up, we are moving on to reports and inquiries. First, are there any city council reports or inquiries for tonight? Councilmember Ball.
Good evening. So Friday, just this past Friday, I was in Tacoma for the election officials essentials. This was a little bit different curriculum. It was designed for council members that have been on maybe their first year, second year, but there were some seasoned people there, even a few mayors, and some that had just been, there was one council member that had been appointed like a week ago. So I made really, really, really green. It was very beneficial to me. There was I won't go into every detail, but there was a section, a lot of it was about law and parliamentary procedure. And they had a couple of attorneys, Jennifer Robertson and I didn't get the other gal's first name, but they're both with a large law firm, and they both have been on city councils and been city attorneys. At any rate, one thing that really stood out, we've talked about trust and transparency quite a bit in our retreat last year and so on. And Jennifer Robertson said that one thing that, is not, if you're trying to build trust, there should not be any surprises from the dais. She called them gotchas, where nobody else saw that coming. And I can think of a couple times that's happened here. And so I just thought that was really interesting, and we need to be more cautious about surprises on the dais. And then also there was some interesting conversation about state initiatives, and not to get into it. Anyway, it was very beneficial. Kind of a fun fact, the gentleman sitting next to me was a council member from Anacortes. His name was TJ, and I can't think of his Fantini, I think. Great name. Anyway, we all did a little, introduction. And just for fun, he mentioned that when he was a kid, he's in his 40s now, he was in the Mickey Mouse Club. And he mentioned that, so he knew Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears, and he's hit up Justin Timberlake for $1 million for a new community center in Anacortes. So my point is, if any of if you have a childhood famous person friend, we could get some money, from your connections. So anyway, it was fun. And he was sitting right next to me. He was a gas.
Great. I'm glad you had the opportunity to go. And I encourage all the other council members to continue to look to see about the other MRSC and AWC training opportunities that come to us every year. All right. Any other council reports? Councilmember Dunn.
I just want to put a great thanks to the community members who joined us on Saturday night at the Marabou Park Hotel for our 20th anniversary of a father-daughter dance. We welcomed more than 350 young ladies and their dads, and actually moms and their sons as well. And a special thanks actually to students from the Ridgeline High School. We were joined by Key Club, which is a service club related to that function from the high school, and also from the Micah Peak High School. So to have youth in our midst, actually, in the help gesture, creating community events was a great thing for everybody. So thanks.
Great. Any others? Councilmember Kurtz.
The rules of procedure governance manual, we are moving along on that. I sent Mike and Jed copies of the draft of that. So we're going to meet on Friday and talk about that. And then I'm working on the revisions for the social media and ethics policy that Linda and Dan have both given some feedback on, and then we'll meet again at some point. And then we had our ordinance committee meeting on Monday and worked through that as well. And I think we're hoping to kick that up a notch and go through a few more at a time as we do that. So lots of light reading lately, but it's been good.
Great, thank you. Come here, Pro Tem.
Excuse me, let me just add on to that. We had a perfect example of why we do the ordinance reviews now. One of the ordinances called for there to be limits on how high we could play our cassette tape decks in our car. So we're making sure that we address that particular ordinance so that nobody plays their cassette tapes too loudly.
Just don't apply it to CDs.
Yeah.
And we're good. All right, any other council members? All right, mayor's report. Lots of meetings over the last few weeks, several coming up, just a high level. I was appointed to the AWC Training and Advisory group. I did miss the meeting because I missed city action days because family health issues. So, but those meetings will continue to come forward and how we can better put together training for our elected officials. City action days, like I said, was a week or so ago. Mark was able to attend that. I was very sorely disappointed to miss it. And well, I'm starting to learn to write February off because I had to leave early last year because the same person and family had another medical issue. So I'm thinking, don't plan any trips for February anymore and I'll be good. We had the Valley Chamber board meeting, the annual meeting for Visit Spokane, the GSI Regional Advocacy Committee. We had a couple of interviews for the Library Board of Trustees. So you guys will be seeing in the next meeting or so, depending on when background checks come back, an appointment request for approval on that. And the crab feed Saturday night. Really disappointed that it was on the same night as the father-daughter dance. I think both celebrations would have been higher attended, but I know that there were some scheduling issues. So this year the hub had the crab feed fundraiser. They moved it to the fairgrounds this year, and it's the first time I'd have a chance to go. I have not heard the number raised. Do you know? Would you like to share, or you're not allowed to yet? Nice, thank you. Great event. Shout out to Ridgeline High School students for that as well. They were there trying to run tables and keep track of paddles raised and whatnot. So I encourage you guys to try to go to that next year. And then coming up, we've got the Valley Chamber Government Action Committee, SRTC board meeting, and best of all, the Girl Scouts Sweets Before Supper event on Saturday night to help support the Girl Scouts around here. So I'm looking forward to that. And last time I went, they actually had, so if you don't know, they have several bakers from around the area, and they each take a flavor of the Girl Scout cookie and they make a dessert out of it. So they're only, well, you'd think they were only this big, but some of them grew quite a bit. And you got to go around and try each one of them before the program and before you eat. And then this wonderful dinner came, and then they served dessert afterwards. So hoping they're skipping the dessert because we're having it before supper, but a great event to support our local girls, which we always do. So I think that's all I've got. Mark, I know you are joining us online. If I can find the right button, would you like to go over your city administrator's report?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight, but we've just got a few things to brief you on the city administrator's report. On Sunday, March 9th, as you probably know, is daylight savings again. So we're going to advance our clocks an hour, and we're going to be back into some longer days, which will be nice. Second thing is that we've got the strategic investment plan workshop coming up on Tuesday, March 28th. That's going to be at City Hall, and it's going to cover some of the things that have been talked about even tonight in some of the citizens' comments. And part of the one of the key takeaways that we want to come out of that workshop with is a better, more deliberate strategy to go over our capital funding and investment strategies with some actual funding strategies that are more concrete. And so that's going to be, it's scheduled for 4 hours. Whether we take 4 hours or not, we'll see. But that's what that conversation is designed to do, and for staff to bring you a proposal about how we would like to see that happen going forward, and to get your feedback on several things that we're going to bring. And so we're looking forward to having that conversation in the context of all of these other discussions that we're having on the library and the community center and other capital projects. And so that'll be on Tuesday, March 25th. Before moving on, any questions about the event?
We look good, Mark.
In that case, I'm going to invite Kyle up to give the 2024 financial wrap up. And you heard just a bit earlier his profile of the budget management program. And so there's a nexus between these two things. And so we thought it fit well. And Kyle, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. So we have distributed kind of our year-end financial snapshot kind of with our monthly reports that really gives a rundown with kind of one visual of the performance of city revenues and city services kind of in a one-pager there. We'll go into a little bit more detail here, but I'll run through these relatively quickly because I think this will be a review for those on the dais. But we can just kind of brief the public as well. Next slide, please, Evan. So our major general fund revenue streams all were at or above budgeted revenues. We have been hovering at 97-98% on property tax for a couple of years. We've had this excess carve out to our TIF and LIP because we have had substantial development in the River District. So with that increment area, they will see a little bit more of that carve out of that TIF percentage dedicated to those infrastructure activities. And so we're approaching, we get close. I just, going forward, we'll be a little bit more aggressive on that new construction credit attributed to TIF and LIP as we develop out year budgets. But that said, 2.53 versus 2.6, that is, so the 2.53 is what we collected. The TIF and LIP collected their portion, which is what we anticipate, but they collected a little bit more than I was planning for. But bank capacity, we've had 0% property tax increase year over year. For a couple of years, we're up to $340,000 now. And so that is an amount that is available councilmatically. And so city council can pass a revenue recapture, an ordinance recapture all of those revenues at whenever the time calls for it, essentially. So that's just kind of a not taking that 1%. You build up this ability to recapture that in the future should you ever need to. And there is no expiration on those that we found out. So sales and use tax continues to kind of outpace what we think. We've been a little bit more conservative on our budgeted sales and use tax revenues. We were a lot more, I would say, we were a lot more, I guess, realistic in 2025. So we budgeted 6.6 million in 2025. That's what we collected last year. We were a little bit more conservative because the rate of increase year over year was substantial. And so I think we're settling in nicely. We collected 3% above what we collected in 2023 for 2024. So, we'll have obviously new commercial activity come to the city. Certainly Topgolf will bolster this a little bit, but we did see a little bit more of a leveling off in 2024 versus previous years for sales and use tax. Permits and planning. This is our cost recovery revenue stream. So this is reflective of actual services performed, not just by city staff, but third-party engineers and plan reviewers as well. So this is money in, money out for permits and planning. Next slide, please. So state and county shared revenues, we get a portion of sales tax for public safety, criminal justice, marijuana, liquor, affordable supportive housing. So we have a pretty good idea based on our population what these resources are going to be year over year. And so MRSC puts out a table of anticipated state and county shared, state shared revenues, and then we can use that to populate the county shared revenues as well to populate these kind of ancillary general fund revenue streams that are attributed to a specific community delivery. And so most of them are public safety. Affordable and supportive housing, we haven't found a mechanism for that. We have those in a restricted revenue line item. And so at some point, we will make some determination on the highest and best use of those funds. But we do not have the available resources to stand up any sort of program with the 47,000 that we received. So that's just going to be a discussion the council has at some point. If there's a partnership opportunity, if there's a regional collective effort that we can contribute to put those funds towards. So other revenues, so we get these periodic reimbursements from TIF and LIFT. We received ours for the Kramer reimbursement literally the third day of the year, which kind of upsets our reporting features because we are way over reporting revenues when they weren't realized in that year. And so all of my monthly updates to council has backed those out because we would see that we are collecting 58,000% of anticipated revenues for January, and this doesn't make any sense. So we were hoping to get those in 2023. We submitted our reimbursement in July, but the process takes time, and I completely understand that. So even through our budget review in 2023, heading into 2024, we were still budgeting to receive those in 2023. And so we see this gigantic reimbursement in 2024. And so it's helpful to back that out because you're not getting any meaningful analysis if you don't. So investment income. So I looked today, our 30-day averages are still hovering at about 4.4%. This time, I think in 2021, they were 0.1%. So we did not have any meaningful revenue coming in from investment for probably a 2 or 3 year period. Obviously, I think with the events of the last couple of years, we have seen this jump, and we have substantial income from investment right now that is realized as unrestricted revenue we can use however council sees fit. And so I think last year was 275, and the year before, I'd have to pull it, but it was probably about half that. And then I think in 2021, at the lowest point, we were collecting annually probably 30,000, I would say. So you can see the massive jump in investment income over those couple of years. And then as we've seen, we've had disbursements from settlements for opioid abatement. Again, there's a couple different theories on highest and best use. We have not spent any of these monies. This will be a conversation to have once those settlements conclude to what we think our total amount's going to be, and again, what the highest and best use is. Do we stand up a program within the city? Do we participate in a larger regional effort and contribute to that cause? And so again, that'll be a conversation for a different day, but we do have those revenues coming in as well. Next slide, please.
Kyle, real quick, you've got a question.
Oh, yeah.
So on the TIF lift, okay, so the funds received in 1/3/24, I'm sorry, were from 2023?
Yeah, from 22 and 23. So when the Kramer overpass construction completed, so we were contributing to that through the TIF and lift. And so we had general fund expenses and REIT expenses charged to that project, knowing that we were going to get reimbursed by the TIF and lift program. And so the timing of those was not ideal. And so we were drawing down our just reserve fund balances, paying for that, knowing that we would eventually get that reimbursement.
Okay.
The hope was really for reporting purposes. It is not a detriment that we got it in January, but just purely for reporting purposes, it makes things a lot cleaner if you can receipt those in the year that they took place.
Right, and so that's done. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. That's
Okay.
been completed. We got that. And so, yep, on to
Okay.
the next.
Thank you.
Yep. So this is a snapshot that we've all seen. I've removed Public Works from this graph. This is just our core general fund services that we charge expenses to. And so you can see across the board, public safety came in right where we budgeted. Usually you'll see that closer to 94, 95%. We did bring on the reserve officer to a full-time status in October of last year that we did not budget monetarily for. And so that's the delta you see on the first column for public safety. The rest of these are coming in right where they need to be. Planning, we had a periodic comprehensive plan grant. We have climate planning that we budgeted fully for. We're still working on those. So you see planning at 75 or at 70%. We carried over a lot of that work that we thought was going to get done in 2024 and 2025 as they wrap up those efforts. So that's the delta you see of 70%. Across the board, I think the rest of them are really right where they need to be. And then bottom right, I'll draw your eyes to the 2024 year-end balance. 8.5 million is certainly that is we've never been in this position before. And so I know that we have plans to draw this down. We have library capital considerations. We have trailhead financing prepayment considerations as well. So upon delivery of those, you'll see this balance draw down, but it is a good position to be in, to not have to get creative with other funding sources because they're just not there. So we're in a great position ending 2024 in general fund. Next slide, please. So we're building out our public works program, and streets is kind of the main part of that. And so we've incorporated our Fund 110 Streets into the public works program. As we're all aware, our transportation benefit district sales tax took effect in 2024. They started collecting it in April. We got our first disbursement in June. And so if you piece this out over 12 months, our TBD sales tax collection would have equaled $822,000. And so, so we're right where we need to be with that. We do have a surplus, as you can see, in our 2024 Streets Fund ending balance of $871,000. That was due to the overlap of retiring of the utility tax with the onset of the TBD sales tax. And so we do have a $500,000 transfer planned from streets operating into streets capital for use towards, those larger capital efforts. And then another state shared revenue, but just below that is our motor vehicle fuel tax. And so we have a pretty good idea year over year of what we're going to get of that. That's a state carve out that we get that's hovers right around that 240,000 a year. So everything as planned for that. REIT, we're still obviously in an expanding phase, and so REIT collections will continue to increase. And so we hit 118% of budgeted revenue for that. We will get large commercial transactions that we will see kind of one-time bumps, and we got two of those, I believe, in 2021 that really ballooned this to I think it was like 1.8 or 1.9 million. We collected just over 1.2 in 2024. And you can see our year-end REIT balances, that bottom section there. Those will fluctuate because these are capital funds that identify a project on the CFP, and we'll build these up for a couple of years, and then we will identify a capital project and then put these revenues to those capital delivery efforts. Next slide, please. And so again, just a quick snapshot of where we're at on budgeted expenses versus actual expenses. And this is exactly what we want to see. And so we're safely under in all of these expenses while still delivering the services that we need to. So with the REIT, these are obviously a lot of like singular project delivery mechanisms. So we finished Appleway. We are in the process of delivering Mission and Sprague as well. So we'll see a little bit of carryover from those from 2024 to 2025. So you're seeing a little bit more of a delta on that one. Next slide, please. Golf operations. So golf operations has been expanding just as we hoped it would, with the new facility, increase in fees for greens fees, for driving range, for all of the services that they deliver. And we did see a 22% increase from 2023 to 2024 in receipted revenue. We're up to 1.36 million there. Green fees have skyrocketed over the last 4 years, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see. A 63% increase over the last 4 years. And driving range fees have kept pace. We have had to close the driving range here and there for some improvements. But we saw a pretty sharp increase in 2024, and we expect that trend to continue. And so the simulators generated almost $80,000 last year, and so that's right where we need those to be. That'll have those paid off for that one-to-one expense versus revenue income in just over 4 years, I want to say. And then we can use that towards the rest of the facility itself. So, but 2024 expense, you can see that we did spend more than we made on the operating side. We did put $200,000 towards debt repayment. We bought a new golf cart fleet and a couple larger capital items. One of those years where we're a little heavy on the capital side. We would expect this trend to skew towards much greater revenue collection versus expense in out years. Next slide, please. And then these are some of the smaller activities just by dollars spent for the rest of our funds. We have 24 funds. A handful do not see any activity in a given year. So we have, police capital. We have our custodial service. So we have a bunch of different funds that don't necessarily receive meaningful activity. So I'm not going to list every single one of them here today. Parks and Arts spent $20,000 in 2024. They have a few more projects scheduled for 2025, so we will expect that to increase based on what they have scheduled for delivery in 2025. Tourism promotion has been pretty steady. We have marketing efforts from Visit Spokane. We have local nonprofit entities that contribute to tourism-related facilities. And then we have a capital fund there that will have some potential activity in the next year or two. So restricted reserve, we set this to match 15% of what we plan to receipt in a given year. So we're right where we need to be with restricted reserve at 1.8 million. That's our rainy day fund. And then Trailhead, the poles and netting were completed in 2024. And then we do have prepayments on the outstanding balance budgeted for 2025. And then lastly, we have our stormwater and aquifer protection. We have absorbed this into the Public Works Department as well. The master plan was completed in 2024. We do have a pretty large balance in there that is going to be dedicated to capital projects in 2025. We have our Sprague Avenue overlay. We have a stormwater component to that that will use most, if not all, of these resources. So, next slide, please. And that wraps it up. So I know we see these on a monthly basis, but if there's anything here that you hadn't seen or had any questions on, we'll take those.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Kyle, thank you for the presentation. 2 questions for you. On the 6.6 million for the sales tax collection in 2024, I think you answered this, but I'm asking if you can just clarify. What amount of that is the result of the TBD that we put in place?
That is separate. So that's
you're not including that in the.
Okay. that is pieced out separately and receipted into the streets fund.
Okay. So then you did answer it later on. Okay. And then my second question, I think you just answered in the last slide there was, I know we budgeted for extra payments on Trailhead. Does that happen like halfway through the year? What's the timing?
So our first ability to prepay would be in June.
Okay.
And then we would send a letter in May to inform them of our intent.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councilmember Kennedy, then
Okay.
Councilmember Ball.
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle, great report. It's always great when we see we have money coming in. More than what's going out.
Yeah.
the sales tax, 6.6, whatever it was. Do you happen to know offhand how much of that dollar amount is from the RV and auto sales and what percentage that might be?
I can get it. Not offhand. It's, retail is by far our biggest, and that's probably a large, so I mean, I don't want to give incorrect, it's probably 20 or 30%.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it'd be great to have it.
Yeah, I will track
Thank
that
you.
down.
Okay, Councilmember Paul.
So on that sales tax, the 6 so for 2025, it'll all be TBD, correct? I mean,
So to break out our sales tax, our rate is 8.9%. 6.5 of that goes to the state,
right,
and 2.4 of that goes to the county. And so we receive the rest. And so we have this 0.08% that the city directly receives. And so we increased that by 0.01% to be dedicated to only for street infrastructure and improvements. And so that 0.01% equates to $822,000 a year.
okay,
And that is diverted separately to the streets fund.
okay.
And so
The other question on the storm water on Sprague, it's going to be just on Sprague, or are they going to go down the hill to that other one, Neeland or something, or?
they will, but it's going to be, so the stormwater component, I think, is being worked out right now. I think I want to say it's 500,000. It's a substantial portion of that, of which a portion is going to come from Reed, but to the extent that we can allocate some of that to this, we will.
All right, any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just one more quick comment. I think that these numbers are showing us the wisdom of moving from the utility tax to the sales tax TBD. Because we are spreading out the burden, obviously.
Yep.
Our low income folks don't have to pay now a utility tax.
Correct.
And then I know some of the numbers that we had concerns with was whether they were going to balance out. Well, it seems to be that they're balancing out.
Yeah, so we're in a great position. We do have a surplus. I think the out years will tell us if the service delivery demand is meeting the revenues, but we're in a great place right now. So.
All right, any other questions? All right, moving on. Thanks,
Thank you.
Kyle. Appreciate it. Mark?
Thanks, Kyle. As we transition to the last topic, I just wanted to remind everybody, we just had the profile about the budget management. You just heard the year-end wrap up from Kyle. If you haven't seen it already, I sent out an article earlier, I think it was this week, where we're starting to get some write-ups about the work that we're doing on budgeting. And the write-up itself is less important than the reason that it's being done, which is to recognize some of the work and the leadership position that we're taking. And so all of that is going to take time to materialize into ongoing evidence, but we're going to continue to bring that to you as we bring our quarterly report. So hopefully you got a kick out of that. And now with the legislative update, we passed, before I go to the schedule, throughout the committee phase of the session, there were 1,161 bills introduced in the House and 852 introduced in the Senate. And so the fiscal committee cutoff was last Friday. We have a House of Origin cutoff coming up on March the 12th. And so as those cutoffs happen, that number of bills that were introduced gets kind of winnowed down and down and down. And so all that to say, right now we're actively tracking 74 bills. And those bills in some way or another are aligned with the city's adopted legislative priorities. Some are strongly aligned, others are less strongly, but they're all aligned. And currently we're taking an opposed position on 9 of them, a support position on 25 of them, and then we're calling the other 30-ish watches. And so we're just kind of seeing what happens with them. And as either they get amended or not, seeing if we want to take an oppose or support position. And so again, as we continue to move through the session, we will continue to update the council on this. And now as bills in number get fewer and fewer that you have to actually focus on, it'll be easier for us to get that information out and keep it updated. And so if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those now. But otherwise, look for this information to continue to become reported as it changes. And if there are no questions, Mayor, that concludes my report.
I don't see any. I'll look around one more time. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one quick comment, Mark, be careful because you got a mouse in your beard.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, see it right there?
Oh.
Okay,
All right.
pointers.
The cursor.
Oh.
Oh, all right.
It's late. All right, next up, we have Community Engagement Commission. Welcome, Summer Darrow. Also the voice of the intro and end of each podcast.
No, I've been at it. And now for something completely different. My name is Summer Darrow. I'm the current chair of the Community Engagement Commission. Just a couple of really brief updates from us, drafted by Bill Norman, who's not here tonight. In December 2024, the terms of our existing officers, that was Robin Beckdahl, who was the chair, and I was the vice chair, expired. In our February meeting, new officers were elected. I'm the current chair, and Bill Norman is the vice chair. Will serve for 2 years. New and ongoing projects. The city planning department has consistently kept us informed regarding the strategies, contributors, and progress with the comprehensive plan so that we are positioned to contribute to the process. The Planning Commission sign code, because of the nature of the dynamic of this project, our involvement is more tangential, but we're engaged in the process with them. 2025 community satisfaction process. Thank you for your little video update, and we've been getting some more of those in, so we appreciate that. We collaborated with city management in shaping the 2025 survey, both as to questions, the relevance or redundancy of the questions, and the overall length of the survey. Each month, we receive updates regarding total number of responses, response rates, and specific areas from which responses are underrepresented, apartments, certain demographics, et cetera. This data will inform our recommendations for subsequent surveys. Parks and Arts Commission, we will continue to collaborate with the Parks and Arts Commission to engage the public in plans to expand and enhance the playground equipment at Pavilion Park. And our work plan, we're continuously developing a schedule of actual and potential work and engagement. Regarding City Hall updates, a regular feature of our monthly meetings is a comprehensive review of relative notes from City Council, commissions, and staff meetings. This process informs our priorities and helps us anticipate opportunities for engagement and collaboration. It's our understanding that City Council has begun to discuss the merit of another town hall meeting. In conjunction with this and perhaps other topics, the City Council has mentioned the possibility of having a workshop with the CEC. And anticipating this joint workshop, the CEC has a recommendation and a request. Our recommendation is that the workshop be scheduled for April 8th, an off-schedule meeting so that we have the advantage of the full hour together. And an ask, in anticipation of this meeting, we would benefit more from more direction from the City Council regarding your current thinking about the primary objective of a town hall meeting. For example, do you want to continue with the theme of transparency in city government? Would you like to preload some specific questions in the invitations? What would they be? A different format, the same format, et cetera. And the commission is engaged and eager to contribute. We are intent on filling in the blanks in our ranks, not only to spread the work out among a larger group, but to benefit from more minds being applied to our opportunities. And I think we've had great success previously, and it's time for another joint meeting.
Right, Mayor Pro Tem.
I was just gonna mention, I think April 8th, if I'm not mistaken, is spring break. So I'm wondering if there's maybe a different day we can choose just so more people can.
Sure. And this is one of those city staff moments where somebody can figure out the calendars. I think we did one round of that and settled there. Our main objective was that we would have the full hour instead of squeezed into another thing. So whatever ends up working for the majority of us, we're open to. Some of us are more flexible than others, obviously, but as many as can attend. And we were kind of looking at a sooner rather than later moment. So, yeah.
Great. Councilmember Curtis.
Were you looking for topics?
I'm happy to take a couple right now. At the same time, anyone who wants to message those in, or if we want to focus that on the meeting itself too. But you got something?
Well, the library,
Uh-huh.
community center.
Yep.
I mean, how to strategize the community engagement. I know part of that is part of the contract with Turner Townsend and Erie, but
Sure.
I think that this would be a really good time to talk about, talking about it.
Absolutely. Yep. We're excited about that too. And we have a lot of places where we're being asked for their specific community engagement requests within that. So that's not all of us, that's some of us. But we're trying to participate as best we can in that. And I think you have some other opportunities prior to us meeting that might address some of that and then kind of hone in how we can help.
Councilmember Ball?
Just an observation, there's 5 Tuesdays in April, so we should be able to figure out something. What?
Hopefully we'll work it out.
You're
Yeah.
whispering.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the calendar person, but I know we'll get there because we're really excited to meet with you guys. I feel like that's been super beneficial to us to really get all the voices from you and what you're thinking and how you can use us best and how we can make our recommendations as helpful as possible. So let us know.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions for Summer? All right, thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, nobody's hit me up for Girl Scout cookies yet. Call me. All right, moving on, Spokane Valley Fire Departments, they are going to quarterly update, so we will be skipping E and moving on to the Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District. Don't see anybody here. Do we have anybody online? No, no Bill? No Nada? Okay, all right. So that moves us up to workshop discussions. Our first workshop is on recreation fees. Mark, are you kicking this one off?
Yeah, I'm going to help lead this one, Mayor, and we have a slide deck that goes along with it that hopefully will help explain some of these numbers. And so if council remembers the last meeting where we discussed this, which was February the 18th, the request was to bring back or to schedule a workshop to bring back some comparative fees and then to talk about a recommendation for resolving the issue that exists with the rates that the Little League has been paying. And so between the last meeting and now, we've done some of that work, and you'll see it here in just a minute. I do want to point out that unfortunately, the institutional knowledge that's associated with this is just not been available to us. Jen Camp has been out on an extended leave, and she's just back. And then another member of the team that was heavily involved in this is no longer with the city. And so piecing together some of these details has been somewhat challenging. But in light of that, Evan, if you can go on to the next slide, we have a recommendation for you this evening to hopefully help resolve this problem and then get to a better approach next year and going forward. And so if you look at some of the 2025 fee comparison with other cities on the eastern side of the mountains, you'll see that there's a variety of different ways that people deal with this kind of thing. And what I want to point out here is when it says nonprofit fee, we've done the best that we can through the fee rates or the fee schedules from each of these municipalities. And if it needed to be followed up with a phone call or an email, we've done that too, just to clarify what it means in their fee schedule. And so to the extent that we're comparing their version of a nonprofit fee with our version of a nonprofit fee, that's what this column indicates. And so you'll see there that if you go from top to bottom, there's just a variety of different ways that people handle this. And there's even, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 of these cities, if you'll go to the far right column, that have a specific agreement with the Little League in that area. And so in some cases, that is for different rates. In some cases, that is for, as you'll see in the case of Cheney, no rates. That the city doesn't charge them to use the fields, but the agreement stipulates that the Little League has to maintain the fields and prepare them for the games. And so there's a whole variety of different ways that people handle this. And then if you get on the west side of the mountains, the fees go up quite a bit. And so we didn't feel it was useful to use any of those comparatives. But you see the numbers here. If we go to the next slide, which is, you'll remember this from the last conversation. This is our current 2025 fee schedule that was adopted with the budget back in December. And really what we're talking about are these two highlighted field items or fee items rather. The ball field rentals for nonprofit organizations, and then the outdoor sports field nonprofit within the sport fields fee category. And so you see the two fees there. The major difference between a ball field and a sports field is a ball field is specifically designed for baseball, whereas a sports field may have some other possible configurations. But we've got a $15 nonprofit fee for a minimum of 2 hours on the ball fields. And then you see there the $5 minimum 2 hours for the sports fields. And so the game prep fees and admin fees are there as well. Evan, next slide, please. So we're going to go straight to the recommendation. And our recommendation, after looking at all of this, comparing our rates with other rates, and looking at the impact of whatever it was that got out of kilter with the Little League's request invoice payment over the last several years, we're currently recommending that council passes Ordinance 308A, which is on the agenda, which is going to amend the city's budget and essentially drop the nonprofit rate, those two items that I just showed you highlighted for ball field and sport field rentals to zero for 2025. And what that'll do is that'll solve the problem, the immediate problem that the Little League is faced with, but it will also give us staff the opportunity to come back and look at a better approach to setting fees for nonprofits and everyone else when it comes to the use of these fields, especially if someone wants to maybe make a volume request, right? I want it for an entire week for every hour of the day or something like that. And so that's our recommendation. We've got other slides in here that kind of remind you of some of the other details that we talked about on February 18th, and we can go through those if you'd like, but essentially that's where we are, and we would again recommend that council pass Ordinance 308A.
Okay, any questions, comments? Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, Mark, I'm grateful for the staff's recommendation. I believe this is a good move. I recognize the actions that were taken in the past have been difficult to, resolve. And I realize the hardships that the current, Little League participant has been having difficulty in. Yeah, I think this is a good move for the city and a good move for the community to make those fields available.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll just echo what Councilmember Dunn said. I think this is a fair way to address this issue, gives the city time to come in and figure out what it's going to do starting in 2026, but also gives the Little League time to, if there is going to be an increase, inform their players and their families that an increase will be coming. So for this particular incident, I think it's really important for us to show good faith, and it was just as much our fault as it was anybody's. And I think addressing it this way is very positive. So thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Kurtz.
Well, I have a few questions, and Mark, I don't know if some of them would be answered in the other slides that you have, but I think on this, one of the slides that you just had regarding the game prep, I think that was something that it looked like it wasn't highlighted on the slides up there as being changed. But when I'm looking at the fee schedule that's in our packet, it looks, if I'm reading it right, like there would be $0 charged for game prep. Is that accurate?
So if Evan, if you can go to the next slide, this should answer that question. So what we would be proposing here is changing those ball field rental rates to zero. The game prep, that's done on an as request basis. In other words, they say, hey, we've got a game on Saturday, come prep the field. That fee would still apply because all of that work needs to be done for the respective games. And also, as you can see here, we would propose that rate would be good for a maximum of 6 hours per day. And if that rate, or if that, excuse me, if that time, and based on the request, we don't think that there's going to be many, if any, instances where that 6 hour time limit is gone over. But if it is, just the regular rate would apply, the $10 an hour. And so that would be the proposal.
And so I just want to make sure, because when I'm looking at the fee schedule that's in the packet, it looks like there is a $0 fee. And maybe I'm just reading it wrong. It's highlighted in yellow on page 61 of 63. So am I just reading that wrong?
Let me get to the fee schedule and I can answer that question.
Because it has adopted and then amended. Amended is ball field rentals looks like 0 highlighted, just like you're saying up there. But then game prep amended, game prep 2025 highlighted. It doesn't have a dollar amount there. So I just want to make sure that what's in the agenda packet is reflected of what's in here.
Correct. And so when I put this together, I purposely left that blank to allow council to make that determination. So the recommendation is 0. It is up to you, council, to then adopt ordinance 308A with this recommendation. But I didn't want to populate this with anything if that wasn't the will of the
So
council.
you're recommending to waive the $75 prep fee as well?
No.
No.
That's what it looks like
Oh,
on the page.
I'm so sorry. That's okay. So that would,
I think he's saying he just left it blank.
okay. That is my fault. That was an error on my part to take that out.
So we would leave the game prep fee just like that up there.
In the application fee.
Correct.
Okay. I have more
took my
questions,
question.
but I think I'll let other people go.
Councilmember Ball, if you want to go.
Well, I hate to sound like the meanie because I love baseball, but I really have heartburn with not including some sort of a fee penalty if they reserve X amount of fields and don't show up, thus not allowing another group to use the fields. I mean, I love baseball, but I just, from what was said in the last meeting, it sounded like they didn't show up sometimes, and that's not fair to other groups. So I think there should be a penalty if they don't show up. Otherwise, we're losing money.
And I think if the council desires to see some kind of incentive to use what was reserved, we can build that into the approach that we would bring back for the 2026 budget proposal, which would include the updates of these fees.
Linda, you good?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think Councilmember Van Orman, then Mayor Pro Tem.
I think it would behoove us, just for public, to know exactly when those ball fields are available to the public. I think it's great if we're adjusting because we want all of the kids to be able to play and we don't want cost to be an issue. But making sure that the city is recouping what we are putting out there is advantageous for the whole population.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just 2 quick comments. One, the entire reason why this issue came up is because we messed up. We were not charging the right amount in previous years. And so I would hate for us to sit here and say, well, yeah, we screwed up, but we're just going to continue to go with what we have on this simply because, that's what we passed last year. And that's why I think what Mark has on there is good. It's a stopgap. It's a placeholder until we come up with the official plan for 2026. I will just ask, and maybe Mark, you might not know the answer to this question, but how often does this particular league reserve something and then not show up? Do you know?
Well, just as a comparison, Evan, go to the 2024 original request, if you don't mind. I think it's the next slide. One more. So in the 2024 request, this was the request. So you see the number of hours and the fields they were associated with in the extended price. And then if you go to the next slide, Evan, and you see the what was actually paid. Next slide, Evan. Or I'm sorry, no, you're right. You're in the right place. If you see what was actually paid, you've got just a drastic difference in the number of hours. And so what was happening, at least in 2024 and 2023, was that the request was being made for all of these hours. And then the typical practice is, if I reserve a field, whether it's for an hour or not, whatever the number is, staff gives me an invoice, I pay the invoice, and that secures my reservation. In these cases, that the invoice was never paid until the end of the season. And then the Little League came back with this reconciliation of some kind and said, okay, we used Diamond 1 for 325 hours and Diamond 2 for 211 hours. I have no idea how they calculated those numbers. And less idea how that hourly rate came into being, because it's not in any fee schedule.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Mark. And I will just say, regardless what we decide to do tonight and in 2026, I think it's important to remember that these games, this league brings in people from other communities.
Absolutely.
All over Spokane Valley as well. So to the extent that they finish the game and then go down to Fieldhouse or Palenque or whatever restaurants or grocery stores that they might be shopping in town, I think it benefits us to be accommodating. So thank you.
Well, and if we look at our strategic plan to take that a step farther, we put an emphasis on wanting amenities and groups to be able to connect within the community. And youth sports fills a need that we have. And so we want to promote that. And I think the proposal here, especially the component of it that allows us to look at how we need to structure the rates in 2026, so that we not only provide a fair, kind of an equitable structure. So if another nonprofit wants to use the fields, they can and get the same rates, but that we're also promoting the Little League, not only for what they're doing now, but for expanding. And so that would be the ultimate goal.
All right, Councilmember Kurtz.
So I had I guess a couple questions and comments. I think I heard last time that the Liberty Lake Little League, the Little League that we're talking about, has the highest fees. Did I hear that right at the last meeting? Yeah. Yes. By $15. Okay. So I guess one of my questions is, along the lines of Councilmember Ball, is that what I worry about with an unlimited amount of hours, that it then does leave it so that other groups can't reserve those fields because the Little League could reserve those. So I would be interested in having some sort of time frame for that, so that it doesn't exclude other nonprofit groups who want to use the ball fields for that. And then if there's no fees that are going to be paid for this, for the ball field rentals, are the parents going to see any benefit of a refund? Because I would assume that part of the rate that they're paying to play ball includes paying for the fields. And that's probably not a question for us, but more for the Little League.
Yeah,
Do you know?
Councilmember Kurtz, the Little League would have to answer the question about their fees, but I can tell you that we are, assuming that you vote to pass this ordinance, we are preparing to issue about $3,800 in refunds to other groups who have already paid for the reservation of fields. They're nonprofits. They fit into this fee structure, but they've already reserved and paid for fields throughout the summer.
Okay, and I know it's not protocol, but we do have somebody from Little League here. If you'd like to address the question, you can come up to the podium.
All right, council members, thank you for spending additional time to develop a solution to the fee schedule for the use of Diamonds, Rookie, Liberty Creek Elementary, Liberty Lake Elementary Fields, collectively the Liberty Lake Fields by Liberty Lake Spokane Valley Little League, the league, we'll call it. I apologize that more of our board members cannot be here at this meeting tonight. We have mandatory assessments going on right now, where player assessments are scheduled right now. So we have to smoothly assess roughly 300 9 to 12-year-olds. What's happening as we speak. And I have to rush out after this to go do that. Like ground ball skills are needed. So my name is Adam Cochran. I'm the coach coordinator for the league, and I'm here to answer any questions that I can, and also take notes on anything that you may have that I can bring to the league for our next meeting as well. Before launching into the fees, I hope to kind of set a framework for why the league is asking for your help. To start the league, just so you know, we serve roughly 600 families in the Liberty Lake Spokane Valley area, with the majority of the players coming from Liberty Lake. Our board is composed of 10 volunteers that each spend, in some cases, well over 100 hours of volunteer time each year. The league relies on the board members, 100 volunteer coaches, team parents, volunteer umpires, generous donations from individuals and businesses, and the generosity of more than a dozen schools and school districts to make baseball happen right in our area. Specifically with respect to schools, Ridgeline High School provides one of their softball fields for our use for free. Selkirk Middle, Green Acres Middle, Evergreen Middle, East Valley Middle, North Pines Middle, Bowdish Middle, and Horizon Middle all provide their fields to us as much as they can for free. Summit, Progress, Opportunity, University, Green Acres, Riverbend, and Sunrise Elementaries all provide their fields to us as much as they can, once again, for free. And as of last fall, East Valley School District has allowed us to use the fourplex of fields in the East Farms area, again, for free. Even with all of these generous donations, we still do not have enough fields for games and practices. I myself have been out there working on those East Valley Farms fields, and they're very, very helpful for us. To illustrate, the 600 players in the league will be split into roughly 50 teams this spring. Most of these teams will play 2 games and hold 1 or 2 practices each week. This estimates into roughly 45 games a week and 75 practices, equaling roughly 120 field days of need. Based on this, field space is our #1 limiting factor as to how many kids in the area can play baseball, right? Indeed, we sometimes do need to set limits on how many kids can register to play, because we simply do not have enough fields for them to play on, even with the generous field donations from our local schools. Right now we cut off registrations, but still we have some people filtering in. We are hopeful that the foregoing background illustrates just how important the low-cost field space is for our league, thus the importance of the Liberty Lake fields for the kids to play baseball in our area. To put it simply, we need the Liberty Lake fields to make baseball happen in our area. Without these fields, we'll need to turn away several teams worth of players, and very likely we would struggle to safely field 2 challengers teams. I don't know if you're aware, but those challengers teams are comprised of mentally and physically challenged youth in our area. Little League requires this challengers division to have fully fenced fields with well-maintained all dirt infields. And with respect to other divisions, if the cost to play on these fields is too prohibitively high, we'll either need to significantly increase registration dues, leading to angry families or families that will decide baseball is now too expensive to play, or not play at the Liberty Lake fields at all. We seek today to avoid those possibilities with your help. With respect to costs, as discussed briefly during the prior city council meeting, spring registration went live, and many registrations were received prior to the league knowing about the price increase to these fields. As such, we did not have a reasonable mechanism to ask 600 parents to pay more to cover the 3 times increase requested by the city. Given this, we're respectfully requesting that Liberty Lake fields be provided to the league at no more than the previous amount invoiced to the league last spring. With this accommodation, we frankly are without a solution for this spring. Following the spring season, the league is requesting to use the Liberty Lake fields for a reasonable cost that is more in line with the field usage by other little leagues in our area. To provide a little context, we contacted several of these little leagues and and the fees they have paid to their local cities, towns are as follows, like we discussed earlier. Coeur d'Alene, Little League is free. Hayden Little League is free. West Plains, the Cheney fields are free, as discussed. Airway Heights are $500 per year, not per season. Post Falls, it's $9,000 per year, not per season, for the exclusive use of the 9 city maintained fields. And then we have a few others, but just to highlight a few in the area. Based on what I just told you, in our area, most cities provide the use of their ball fields for no additional charge over what is paid by residents via local taxes already. And in the most extreme case, Post Falls charges $1,000 per baseball, softball field per year. Again, not per season. We play 2 seasons every year, spring and fall. Note here that these are also designated baseball, softball fields with dirt infields, much like the diamonds here in Liberty Lake, which differ from the grass areas making up the T-ball and coach pitch fields at Liberty Creek and Liberty Lake Elementary Schools. Full grass fields are similar to those just mentioned, are not charged to our neighboring little leagues. In addition to these field use fees, field prep is also an issue, right? Prior to this year, the league was charged $20 per field to drag and line the fields in preparation for games. This year, that charge has more than tripled to $75, as we're proposing. Note that for our neighboring little leagues, the use fees described above are inclusive of field maintenance in most cases, and when field maintenance is not included, these little leagues are given full access to the fields at no charge to maintain them. In light of what I just stated, we are asking for the field maintenance fees to return to the $20 field charge, which is already higher than most, and or for the league to have full access to the fields by our volunteers to make them safe, playable, and enjoyable for all. Basically, we're just here to ask for your help. Less. Help not to make money, not to gain notoriety, not for any other reason, but to give 600 families and growing a home to safely play baseball. For years, Liberty Lake and the Liberty Lake Fields have been that home. Our predecessors helped fund the scoreboard that sits on that premise as well. Please help us keep it here by passing a fee schedule that is in line with what our neighboring little leagues pay to provide baseball to their residents. And we're also looking at expanding into softball as well. So as well as, I don't know if you're aware, we are hosting districts this year too. So there will be teams coming from Moses Lake, Cheney, Ephrata, all over the place, basically coming to use all those fields. So the more the merrier.
That's what it hurts. So I think what I heard you say is that what you guys were hoping for in coming here is paying no more than you did last year.
Yep.
And then also that if you could line and do the fields on your own, you guys would be good.
Well, that'd be something I'd have to take back to the board.
I thought that's what I
Well,
heard you say. So
no,
correct me if I
we're
didn't
asking
hear
for
that
the
right.
field prep to go back down to $20.
Yeah, and I
$20.
thought I heard you say, or having full access.
Or
to the
having
field.
full access to the fields.
to do it
where
yourself.
We could do that ourselves. We've done that before, but it does take a lot of prep.
Okay.
It does take a lot of time to do that.
What's
So,
your preference?
for these fields in here, probably that they're done by field maintenance.
Okay, at last year's rate.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I just had
I've
a,
lined fields myself and it takes
Yeah.
a lot of time.
and I just had a quick sidebar with the city attorney. I don't know what kind of liability issues that might introduce. Something for us to keep in mind. Right, does anybody else have any questions while we've got you? All right,
I
Councilmember.
just have a
Paul.
question on the city side. Who does the scheduling? You know, so that there's a,
That's Breck's department, that's Mikhail, and that we approved software for that this year to make it easier.
oh, okay, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Okay, is there any further discussion, Councilmember Kurtz?
My question was more a procedural question. So because it's a budget amendment, well, so because I've been doing the rules of procedure part, I want to ask Sean a question. So for a budget amendment, I think what I understood in reading things is that it has to be a majority plus one of the whole, so 5 votes. Is that right? To do a budget amendment?
No, it's just a passage of an ordinance. So it's not, it's a budget amendment, but it's just done by way of an ordinance.
Okay, because when I was looking at it earlier and I did not think of this until I walked in, but it was around transferring in one of the RCWs saying that in order to increase or decrease or revoke or recall any portion of the appropriations. So does that fit under this or not?
Kyle, go ahead.
I don't know the specifics of where the funds are going, so I'll let Kyle answer that question.
Yeah, so budgeted appropriations are not going to change at all. So,
Yeah, this is strictly a change to the fee schedule.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, and when we get to the point, I think we're going to be looking to get a motion to suspend the rules and move this to a second reads. Any other discussion on this one? All right. Oh,
procedurally again, so if
Yes.
I wanted to make an amendment to the ordinance, would I do that during the ordinance section or yes, I'm seeing him, what I said.
All right.
So, Mayor, can I make a comment?
Oh, I guess so.
So the fees that we just discussed, that would essentially drop that field usage fee down to zero. Just to clarify, staff is not recommending that we change the game prep fee. I mean, it as you heard the rep from the Little League say, it takes a lot of time to prep these fields.
Yep. I think we all got that. Any questions on that? No, I think we're good. Thanks, Mark, for that summary. All right, our next workshop is on the commission appointment process. All right. Do we have any slides for this? And who is running the discussion tonight? Nobody? Was Jed?
No, it wasn't Jed. We actually already went over this. And I'm not sure why we talked about bringing it back on March 4th, because we were talking about perhaps putting some of this in the manual, right?
Yeah, I think we
Governance
need, if
manual.
I can speak out. Jen.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
I think that we wanted to come up with the application questions. I think that was one of the homework assignments, was coming up with application questions. But then I think we also, maybe not tonight, because I don't think we're ready, go through, because Mayor Pro Tem had some language. I had some language from the governance manual. So I think the idea at some point, probably not tonight, maybe, was to look at that and figure out which one we wanted to do, so we can just plop it in there.
Okay, so
So
next steps.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So you're talking about putting it into the rules of procedure or?
Yeah, the governance manual, yeah.
Okay.
But I think we
Oh.
need to, I think it would be helpful to have that discussion outside of the big, long document, like if we can plop that
Oh.
in and have that ready to go.
Mhm.
So that Mike and Jed and I don't have to try to, or we can, I mean, Mike and Jed and I can go through it too, but.
Mhm.
And then there were questions about the application process and that, and I had sent Mark earlier, and can have him send that out to the council to a few different applications that other cities use, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can
Right.
look at what other cities are asking of their commission board appointments.
Yeah, and I know some of our applicants can be technologically challenged, so I think making it easier to apply with physical papers is really beneficial, because I know we've had some people complain that we prefer obviously online, but we need to be able to accommodate everybody. Okay, so basically bring this back in the future. Okay, well. All right, workshop over.
But
It's the shortest workshop in history.
I could just like touch on,
Sure.
but who would be in charge of bringing that back, I guess? So there's
Yeah.
a person who's in charge of bringing it back.
Mark, thoughts?
So, I mean, I would be looking for input from the council as to if it's just a matter of bringing recommendations for the application questions themselves and the process by which they're submitted. We can go through the research based on the sources that Councilmember Kurtz has provided and either make some recommendations or get a conversation started. So staff can take the responsibility of bringing that back. I just want to make sure that you're not asking us to go out and make other recommendations, or if you are, tell us what those are.
So I think it's just the application part.
Okay. Yes,
Not
staff
the-
can take the responsibility for that.
Are you?
Well, I think the application, maybe we just need to have a conversation, a workshop about the process. And have both of the two different documents that were presented, so we can just figure out what we want to do as a council, because I think that's the spot that we're at. Is just going through those and marking them up.
Okay. I guess I thought maybe that's what we were doing tonight, so I maybe misunderstood. Go ahead.
So I'm wondering, Mark, based on what you said, if you guys could bring back your recommendations on kind of the paperwork side, and then we could bring back some more ideas, or maybe just the ideas that we've been bouncing around on the see the word that we want to call the non-paperwork side. Just the process. So, would that work, Mark?
Yes, staff can take the responsibility of bringing back what I would call the document, the application with recommendations.
Okay.
Incorporated into it.
So maybe when we get to, the calendar, we
Yep.
can figure out today.
All right, we had Councilmember Ball and Councilmember Kennedy.
Well, okay, I thought that was the homework assignment, was to bring back questions for this application, so I wrote down 2, but so are we not going to do that, or?
That's what it sounds like.
Well, that would be, I mean, my understanding is that would be what Mark and the staff come back with. They
Um,
would say, okay, here's the option on how you could have an application. Maybe option A is an application that looks like this, or option B is an application that looks like this, with some of these questions that we could tack on if
I
we
see.
wanted to. Or maybe that's not the recommendation from staff. Maybe the recommendation from staff is to just shorten the whole thing.
Mhm.
And not have those things, in which case we could discuss later on whether we wanted to add something on top of that.
Well, should these questions be sent to somebody, for potential inclusion in this document or this application, or, I mean,
Yeah, so I'll send you an email reminding you of this, but if you have questions that you want to be considered, send them to me.
okay. All right, thanks, Mark.
All right, Councilmember Kennedy.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I was going to recommend, based on our previous conversation with this, there were different ideas that came up in that meeting. So I would recommend that we look at those, have staff look at those, mark down what those recommendations are. I would certainly recommend if council has some additional items to add, let's get that to staff, let them include that, and then we can bring it to one of our meetings. I think what it'll do is it'll shorten up the subcommittee of coming back more than one time.
And I think I've forwarded, and if I didn't, I can forward it again. The presentation that I had in the last meeting where we discussed this, that had like the 10 ideas on it, and it was just like a Microsoft Word document. So if you need that again, I can forward that and we can agree with some of them or shoot holes in other parts of it.
That's good. All right, Councilmember.
So maybe
Kurtz.
for when we do bring this back, we have both of them available up on the screen,
Yep.
so we could like redline them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, anything else before we conclude that workshop? All right, not hearing any, moving on to general business consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve general business consent agenda items 10A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H.
Second.
Okay, second from Councilmember Kennedy. All right, all in favor of approving consent agenda items A through H, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0.
I'll make a motion to approve general business item 11A, the Gulf Pro agreement with Chris Johnston.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Kennedy. Do we have any questions about this updated contract for our golf pro? Anybody? Councilmember Dunn?
I have no questions, but I specifically just want to recognize Chris Johnson for his work at the golf course. In my witness, the place has grown and created an enormous asset for the community. So high support for this agreement.
Any questions more? Councilman
No, I just-
Councilman Van Norman.
I agree. We have an absolutely amazing golf course pro. My question would be for Kyle. With the L&I minimum, does what we're planning on doing in this with raising the percentages, is that what's going to meet the minimum?
No, so the minimum is purely, so LNI sets the exemption threshold at that dollar amount. Anything that is commission or otherwise would be earned in addition to that.
In addition to.
Correct.
And that is the same throughout other jurisdictions that have golf courses?
Yes.
Councilmember Vol, you had a question?
Oh, I was just going to echo what Councilmember Dunn said, that Chris is terrific, and he helped me with my grip quite a bit.
All right. Okay, there's no further discussion. All in favor of approving the golf pro agreement with Chris Johnson, please say aye. Any opposed? My motion passes 6-0.
Stand by my
Okay.
computer's having troubles. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve general business item 11B, the work order to the project management services agreement between Turner and Townsend Heery and the city.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Kennedy. All right, discussion. Councilmember Kennedy.
Yes, I guess more of concerns is that I'm certainly in favor that we have a budget moving forward with some concept for them to come up with this. My concern is we're reinventing the wheel. Because what we've asked here is that based on our last meeting, the staff and them to develop two concepts. And then later on in the paragraph, we have scope of services, order number 2 is come up with 3 options. So I've heard from citizens, and to be honest, if you think back, we've been talking about this now for years. We have had meeting after meeting after meeting. We've had committees after committees after committees determine what we're going to do. We have spent a lot of time and effort this last year and the first of this year talking about the library and what we're going to do with it. I think everybody's on the page. That would be nice and positive to have more space for the library and certainly a quote community center, whatever that definition is, more space. That's what it comes down to. On it, we were set to do something with an existing building. And when we start looking at the costs, it really came up to, well, we have another concept. We would go back what we looked at before. So my concern is if we're going to suddenly slow down to start getting more committees to look at what we've already made a decision on, I think that we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot and not move ahead with this in a positive way. Because in my opinion, what we're looking at, we looked at 14,400 square feet where it had sufficient room for a community center, gathering things of the sort here. The only thing I think we're looking at is that taking that square footage and we're moving it. We're moving it to another part of the city. Maybe we'll add something to that. So I'm in favor we move ahead with something here. I'm just concerned that we're going to try to reinvent the wheel. I don't want the council to suddenly go through more forming of committees. Community engagement has already been involved in this. We've had farmers market for the last year to ask exactly what the citizens want. And to suddenly say, well, we need to go through that again, I think is anti-productive.
So you don't want community engagement on this? You just want to move
No,
forward?
I have no challenge with them being involved, but not to the point of slowing the system down that we have to go through that whole thing again. We've already had their input and a lot of citizens' input that one, we wanted to do something where the space was 14,400 square feet. I think that's a given. I don't think there's any discussion on other than we would like to have more space on it. I'm going to reiterate, to me, it's just taking what we've already put all this time and effort in through community engagement, through farmers market, and we're simply moving it to another part of the city.
Yeah. Well, before I got Councilmember Van Orman, then Kurtz. It's interesting. We were interviewing Arlene Fisher, of all people, for the Board of Trustees, open position for the library. And she related a story, and you've probably heard it. You know, Arlene was sitting at her desk trying to get 65 plus ordinances ready, you know, to get the city started. And Mayor Peterson walks in and throws a book in front of her, basically says, we need a library, you know, make it happen. And the book was basically, I forgot the exact title, is Do It Right the First Time, as we've heard from several of our constituents. So, you know, I hear loud and clear the community, you know, we've had community engagement. Yes, over the years, but things change. I mean, just looking at the community page over the last couple of days. I mean, granted, there has to be, you know, that's a lot of opinions for people who don't know some of the history and whatnot, but to pin it down for today, 2025 is much different than 2017. You don't get a good representative sample from the farmers market. So that's just my 2 cents on that piece of it. And I will shut up and go to Councilmember Van Orman.
Well, hopefully I can articulate it as well as Arlene did. No matter what process we do, we want to have a process. We want it to be open, transparent, and get as much of the public input as we can going forward. Otherwise, no matter what we put on for a vote, isn't going to go because they're not going to be understanding what they're voting for. And frankly, like you said, looking on the community page, It's all over the place because it's not articulated yet. And the reason why it's not articulated, we want to hear the input of the people. What do you want? What do you want that you want to spend your hard-earned tax dollars on that's beneficial for years to come? Because we're looking at the next 20 years.
And hopefully through this process, we'll narrow down the scope and to what we need, not a showpiece, but something that's functional and financially feasible to
Believe it or
present.
not, I think we can get both.
Well, I'm just, if we don't have to go to the people, if we can fund it, that's great, but that's part of the process. You said, I think I had Councilmember Kurtz or Ball next. Who was it?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Kurtz, then Mayor Pro Tem.
So I think the scope of the project is actually not just moving it, what we had designed from one space to the other. What we asked them to do was come up with something that meets the needs that were outlined in the needs assessment, which is different than what was actually proposed because it was smaller, because that's the space that we had. But I'm bristling just a little bit at, we've had that their input, and we haven't listened to it. We haven't done anything. We've had their input for the last decade and we have not made a move, and we've spent $577,000 and we're going to spend $167,000 more, and we haven't done anything. And what I worry about is that we're going to, spend some of the money, and then this council's still not going to vote to move something forward. And I do strongly believe that if the process takes longer, then we let the process take longer. I don't want us to build something that's too small. I don't want us to build something, go out for something that's too expensive. But I want us to build the right thing for the city, whatever that is, whether it's a library and community center, whatever the community has asked for. But we cannot continue, in my opinion, to not listen and continue to say we need more information. So I want us to listen to what they're saying and take an action that reflects what the citizens want. And like the mayor said, the city is totally different than it was when we started this project. And I think that perhaps we'll get a lot of different feedback than maybe we did the last couple times.
Mayor Pro Tem, I've got you next.
Thank you. Excuse me. So a couple of things. One, in one respect, I kind of feel like I'm suffering from whiplash here because, 10 months ago, we were told over and over again, this is what the community wants. We need to move forward. We need to move forward now. There's no more time for delay. And now it seems to be that, well, maybe this isn't what the community wants, or maybe we need to take our time, which I don't mind taking our time. I think it's important to take our time, but I also think it's important to have a goal, have a time frame that we're trying to reach this on. Mm-hmm. And if we say, okay, our goal, if we need a bond measure, which we don't know for sure that we're going to need a bond measure, but if we need a bond measure, our goal is to have something that we can put forward in September. September is the deadline. I believe it's September 6th or September 7th.
August.
Well, a couple of years ago, it was first week in September, but regardless of what it is, Kelsey would probably know. Kelsey, do you know when the deadline is? Okay. Let's say it's the last week of August, whenever it is, that we say, okay, we're going to work back from there and say that this is the plan, is to try to put something forward or have some sort of path forward by the time that deadline comes along. That way, that is an option for us. Again, we may not take that option. We may not need that option, but at least we'll have it in place. The great thing I think about the planning option that we have in our packets is we have 3 different options that they're going to come back to us with. An option for a standalone library, an option for a library combined with a community center, and then the library combined with the community center with a scope intended to fit within a defined budget. Those 3 are good options for us to have. And if they can get this back to us by June, that gives us a couple of months to go out to the community, to hold an open house, to do something at Trailhead, to do something wherever, and have people come and vote on the different options, or to put basically what we did at the library last fall, where we had the different options up on the wall and the community gives us the feedback. I don't think this ties us into anything. All it does is it's telling us that we're gonna have a couple of different options that we will have hopefully by the first part of summer, that then we can have the Community Engagement Commission go out and hold an open house or 2 or 3 to move us forward. I also think that, you know, I think everyone's getting too hyper about the term community center and what exactly that means. As we saw in the report from 2019, to me, the definition of a community center or a community annex or whatever we're going to call it is the meeting space. That's what was called for. And that's what people want, is the meeting space. So whether it's called a community center or an annex or an empty building or whatever we're going to call it, it's the same thing. It's a place for people to come and have a meeting or have an event or have a ceramics competition or whatever it is. And then it's going to be the future city councils and it's going to be the future leaders of the city who decide what exactly to do with that building. We're talking 2027 as the possibility of when this could actually, according to what I read earlier, could actually be open and operating. So it's going to be the next city council that's going to come in and decide, okay, maybe we want to offer classes of some sort. Maybe the city wants to do extra events at the community center or annex or whatever it's called, and make it what the community wants at that particular time. I think that's the great thing about having it be separate from the library, but connected to the library, is that it gives us the flexibility. It gives the library the flexibility. It gives the city the flexibility to decide in the future what it wants to do with it. If you go back and look at the options that were put forward for the Legacy Church building, there were like 3 or 4 different meeting rooms that were on the layouts. You could also call those a community center, because that's exactly what they were essentially, is it was a place for the community to come together to gather. So I just think it's really important to, you know, not be so concerned about what we might do 3 or 4 steps down the line, but come up with options now that give us the opportunity to do something 3 or 4 steps down the line. Because if we don't do that, then we're right back to square one. And as Councilmember Kurt says, we continue to have conversations and talk and talk and talk, and it just goes on in perpetuity. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Your Councilmember Ball.
So it sounds to me like, Mayor Pro Tem, you're kind of referring to like what I would think of be a flex space. So maybe I'm putting things ahead here, but if that's the concept, then we need to have some kind, I think, a kitchen in it, you know, so if people want to have some sort of a, you know, event where there's food served, you know, that would be something that would have to be included. So then, you know, it comes to getting to the people. And I think the CEC really needs to get involved in this, because we do need more feedback from people on what they would perceive this flex space to be. I just think we should take our time on this and not rush it, because we don't know what everybody wants.
Well, I think, you know, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, we can have a goal, and that goal can always move. We can have a goal of, you know, getting of November, if a bond, like you said, if a bond is even required, we can have that goal, but things change as we get more information.
True.
That can always change, but if we don't set a deadline date, then it's going to be hard to hit it. I know, I mean, I've worked enough projects in my life to know that you start with your date and then you do the Gantt chart backward, and you're always behind. You should have started 3 months before you did. That's just how projects you should end up working. But you need to start somewhere. I think I saw your hand hitting up.
Yeah, I support the engagement and the actions outlined in the work order.
Yeah, Councilmember Kennedy.
So I recommend moving forward with the Turner and Sounds and look, take all the information in from 2016 and 17, when a lot of time and effort was put into what would that building look like? The windows, the doors, the tile, all that stuff was looked at extensively at that time. A lot of time and effort was put into that. So I think we already have groundwork laid there that is somewhere within the city. And I think it's important that they understand that is there. So we're not starting from scratch again.
Yeah, that information's out there, including the original, the not the original number past two with the pool. I mean, I think that building was something like 35,000 square feet. So there's got to be something in the past that we can start with. All right, any other discussion? All right, not hearing any. All those in favor of approving work order number 2, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, we're up to council comments. Any further comments on things not associated with our future workshop schedule? All good? Not hearing any. We have no public hearings or appeals, no resolutions. Now we are up to the ordinance 308A, first read. Oh. Hold on. Oh. Yeah, I know you said you might have a. Okay, all right, go ahead, Kelsey.
Ordinance number 308A, an ordinance amending ordinance number 308 passed by the City Council on December 17th, 2024, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, adopting a budget for the period January 1, 2025 through December 31st, 2025, appropriating funds and establishing salary schedules for established positions.
Okay, all right. So we got first read done.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and move to immediate second read and consideration of ordinance 308A.
All right, we have a second to suspend the rules.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Kennedy. Any discussion?
This is just on.
Yeah, this is just suspending the rules to move to a second read at the same meeting. All right, no discussion. All those in favor of suspending the rules so we can move to a second read tonight, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 6-0.
Now.
Hang on. Kelsey, go ahead.
Ordinance number 308A, an ordinance amending ordinance number 308 passed by the City Council on December 17th, 2024, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, adopting a budget for the period January 1, 2025 through December 31st, 2025, appropriating funds and establishing salary schedules for established positions.
Motion to move ordinance number 308A.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a second by Councilmember Van Orman. Okay, further discussion. Councilmember Ball.
Okay, just to be clear, this is just about the ball field thing, and they're still going to pay for the field prep, correct?
That's what's in here.
Okay.
That was the recommendation from staff and nobody has asked to change that.
Okay.
Were you going to make amendments there? Okay.
Okay, any discussion? All right, not hearing any. All those in favor, sorry, public comment.
That and we might need to amend the exhibits if we want to align with the recommendation
Right.
in Mark's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the recommendation that Mark gave is what is the collective understanding. Is that correct? So that I think we adopt 308A with that intent. If that is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need?
Do we need an official motion?
If it's different than what's been proposed under 308 originally, then yes, there needs to be a motion to make that.
Okay.
change.
Nice.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to amend Exhibit A under 2025 Facilities Program Fee Schedule for ball field rentals to 0 and under game prep to 75.
Leave it at 75.
Yeah, leaving it at 75.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, everybody, pick one, Kelsey. All right, we have a motion and second to update Schedule A. That's what it's called, Exhibit A, thank you. To clarify $0 on the ball field rentals for nonprofits and leave the $75 game prep on there. So do we have any discussion? Not hearing all those in favor of the change to Exhibit A, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Not hearing 6-0. Okay, so we have an amended exhibit. All right, now we look to our vast audience for any public testimony on this ordinance. If there's anybody in chambers who'd like to comment on this ordinance, please speak now or forever hold your peace. If there's anybody online who'd like to make a comment on the ordinance, go ahead and send a note to our meeting host in chat and we will call on you. This is going to go really quick. Do we have anybody? It's just that. Come on up. No, we need you at the microphone so it gets recorded. All right, Lynn Atkins. Just on this just on this ordinance.
Yes, I am aware it is on this ordinance and I am here because it is a topic other than the library. And I just want to say, please, just do it.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, hold on, we gotta, Kyle?
We have one more, so apologies to this. And it is third from the bottom under Exhibit A, outdoor sports fields nonprofit per hour with minimum 2 hours per day.
Good catch.
That is currently $5. The recommendation is 0.
Okay, do we have a motion to change that third line from the bottom to 0?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to amend Exhibit A, third line from the bottom, outdoor sports fields, nonprofit, from $5 to 0.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Ball. Any discussion? Yeah,
I think my question would just be, this is limited to 2 hours per day. Was there any change to that? Because the other ones were unlimited.
6, yeah.
6, yeah.
6, yeah. I think it was 6 hours per day is the recommendation. Is that correct?
From the presentation this evening, yes, the
Oh.
exhibit A schedule still
Yeah.
says.
Yeah, it would go from a minimum of 2 to a maximum of 6.
So I'll make an amendment to that motion to also include the maximum of 6 hours per day.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the,
Why don't you just leave it? It's been out there just to amend as far as the 6 hours and it's on the record from that. So if you want Kelsey to reread it, we can do that. We don't want to change it by way of doing it. So let's just leave it how Annie indicated. And Kelsey, if you want to read back what that motion is, let's do it that way.
Lay it on.
No pressure.
So Councilmember Kurtz moved to amend the motion to include the maximum of 6 hours per day.
and remove the minimum. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Not hearing any, 6-0. All right, so now we've approved the amendment. Now we're back to the original. All those in favor, what?
It's Chris's amendment, right?
Yeah, so we have to,
Chris's amendment.
we approved the amendment. to the
Right, I was
amendment.
gonna ask for the vote to approve your,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
where I was headed.
Okay. Yeah.
I got my dinosaurs, if anybody remembers Jurassic Parliament. All right, so those in favor of approving the amendment to the third line from the bottom in Exhibit A, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. Okay, any more amendments to exhibits? All right, not hearing any. All those in favor of approving ordinance 308A as amended? Good? All right, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. Okay, introduction of upcoming agenda items. All right, got this in front of you. So you heard Summer about the joint workshop with CEC. So we will take that from March 18th and we will look at the calendar and see what we can figure out for April. Are we still on schedule for the secondhand smoke on the 18th, Mark?
We are.
Okay, special meeting, we already have that on the 25th with regards to strategic investment plan. Kyle, are we on track for April 1st for financial policy updates? Okay, and I think we still have tentative for personnel manual updates. We will confirm that with Heidi unless you know that we're on track for that, Mark.
That's my understanding is we're on track for both of those in parallel.
Super. Okay. April 15th, this is Kyle again. TIF lift project update. We good for that date still? Okay, June 3rd, transportation improvement workshop. We'll get updates. We're getting kind of far out here. We'll keep in touch with Lisa on that. Greenhouse gas sub-element, that's Lisa, and a resiliency sub-element. I'll leave those to Lisa. The other ones we have on the bottom of the list that need dates. First, let's touch on what we talked about earlier with regards to scheduling a follow-up with regards to the applications for commissions. Mark, when do you feel it's reasonable to time-wise to bring something back from staff with regards to the applications?
Some of that is going to depend on some of these other items. I would say with comfort, the first May meeting.
Okay. All right, we'll put that as tentative.
Now, what was that one again?
That's the one with recommendations for the application.
Oh, right.
The
Okay.
paperwork piece of that. All right, then we've got code of ethics and social media. How are we doing on that? You still leave it at TBD?
I would leave it at TBD. I think we're closer probably on the governance manual at some point than that. But as far as I think the other aspect of the commission appointment process was the process part.
Right.
Which we could probably do before May.
True. Let's see, let's take a look at April 1st or 15th. For that, let me, probably not the first, because I'm not sure how comprehensive the financial and personnel policy updates are. I haven't seen the red lines yet. So let's shoot for maybe April 15th if we could. Let me make a note here. For the process. Okay. Transparency Act.
We don't need another workshop on that one. It's basically just putting into writing
Okay.
what we had talked about.
Okay.
So, and
Are
I
we
know
looking
Mark
at
was,
I can't remember. Were we looking at a resolution for that?
Well, I think most of that is going to be incorporated into the governance manual as that is
Yeah.
built out.
yeah.
Perfect. One less document to keep track of.
So if
Okay,
there's something you want me to dump into the governance manual.
sounds like.
Yeah, I think I'll forward it to you.
All right, housing comp plan update and sign code, we'll have to leave that up to Lisa. Is there any other future workshops that we want to consider adding? This already takes us out probably through June, early July. Not hearing any? Sounds good. All right, further citizen comments. Anybody else would like to make a citizen comment here in chambers before we leave? Anybody is there anybody online who'd like to make a final citizen comment before we adjourn? Nothing? All right, so there's no further business in front of the council, so we will adjourn at 8:11. It's still past my bedtime.